All right, guys, welcome to this week's episode of This Is Your Line and Length. I'm sort of your regular host, Aiden, joined by Luke Kelly, and this week's guest, Ryan Bear. How are we, fellas?
I'm going great, mate.
Yeah, good. Real good. Happy to be joining you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, Barry. Thanks for coming on.
Mate, we're very excited to have you on. And funnily enough, I think you lived with both of us, both myself and Kels, back at CSU.
I have.
You've come a long way since then, mate. What is it that you're up to now? It's been, 10 years or so since you and I last caught up. How have you been?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm married, father of two, and working as a solicitor. And I am a partner in the firm where I work. So sort of come a long way from...
There's a bit to digest there, Bear. That's a huge leap, isn't it? From
what you guys would remember me as at uni.
As the big party animal.
How did that all come about, mate? Like that's a huge shift from what I remember at uni, where you were always the first guys that I could have a drink with quite easily. Whereas now it's as I said, it's been a while. You're partner at a law firm, you're a solicitor, you're a parent, your husband. How's your mental health been through sort of that entire shift? What led to those sorts of changes?
Yeah, well, I guess it wasn't easy. I left uni and moved back to Coffs Harbour. So all of a sudden, straight away there, you've got the isolation from your close mates. I know a lot of the guys sort of moved to Sydney, where they're from, or to the city for job opportunities, things like that. So they've sort of stayed in close contact and regular contact. So I moved up here, started playing footy, so made a good bunch of mates up here, and then met my partner, and not long after we met, probably about 6 months after, 8-9 months after we got together, we found out we were having a child. So it's a bit of a drastic change, but you sort of just learn to cope with it and deal with it and take it all one step at a time, and don't think too far ahead. It's sort of how I handled it.
You were doing policing at CSU. Why the shift into law?
I left uni with a degree in criminal justice. Didn't want to be a police officer anymore. Just wasn't for me. After studying it, you sort of understand, I guess, what the job is a bit better, and I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do at all. So from there, I went back to the drawing board and thought about what did I enjoy that I'd studied. And what I did enjoy was the law aspect of it. So I did a few law units at Bathurst. And one night, just on a whim, I just put in an application to study via distance and got accepted the next morning. So my original goal was to just study a little bit, take it part-time, and the original plan was to finish by the time I was 30, take some time, travel overseas, that sort of thing. So that all changed pretty quickly, and I decided to knuckle down and get it done, and finished 4 years ago now. 3 years ago, I think it was, yeah.
Barry, I know that for a stage there, you were working 2 jobs, obviously parenting 2 kids, you're playing footy, you were studying. How did you balance all that going on in your life at once?
Poorly, looking back on it. Not well.
Yeah.
You get pulled in so many different directions that you can't really give 100% in any one aspect. So I was trying to focus on, I guess, the important things, which was at that time was studying and getting that done. And I was also a stay-at-home dad for about a year. So I sort of focused on those two things. And I was still playing footy and that sort of thing, but I wasn't catching up with my mates much. I wasn't giving my all at work. I was sort of just turning up, going through the motions, that sort of thing. But yeah, I focused on the important things. And eventually
so if you had your time over, what would you change, like trying to balance all those things?
I guess there isn't much that I could change.
Yeah.
I still had to work to be able to provide financial support. Couldn't give that away.
Yep.
I ended up sacrificing football. So I haven't played rugby for 4 years now. It was just too much to give up Tuesday, Thursday nights for training, and then by the time you look at travel and things like that, it's all day Saturday. So that was just too much time. I guess I think of it as selfish time. I can't give myself that time when I've got all the other priorities to think about.
Yeah.
It sounds like being a father and being a husband and now a lawyer and a partner in the law firm, it sounds like you're prioritizing those sort of as first priorities for you. Where does yourself fit into that? Where do your sort of self-care, where does that fall for you?
Anytime before 6:30 a.m. So if I get up before then, that's when I've got time, I guess, to myself, where I'll get up and go for a run, or I'll just get up and sit down and watch the news in peace. Other than that, really, by the time I get home or get the kids up for school in the morning, get them to school, get to work, pick them up after school, cook dinner, tidy up the house, it's 10 o'clock and it's time for bed. So there's not really much in there.
Do you prioritize that time before 6:30? Like, will you specifically get up early, or are there some days when you just like, you wake up at 6:30 and you're like, oh, I've missed that time? So how do you go about that?
I try to prioritize it, but
yeah,
I sometimes sleep's more important, really, is what it gets down to. I was listening to Lombi's podcast today, where he was saying that he tries to get 8 hours a night. For me, anything over 5.5 is a win.
Oh, so, wow. Is that right?
Yep. By the time I'm in bed to go to sleep at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then if you've got any wake-ups through the night, you have to deal with those, and then looking to get up at 5:30 a.m. sometimes just doesn't happen.
Mate, it sounds like you don't actually get a lot of time to yourself. Are there ways throughout the day that you kind of de-stress or kind of help sort of your mental health throughout the day when it is super busy and you don't have as much time as, say, some of us who are either back at uni or aren't parents or aren't, own part owners in a law firm?
Yeah. There are sometimes. I actually like to cook. So I'll cook dinner most nights, where I'll just sort of put some headphones in, zone out, focus on cooking dinner, not really deal with any other distractions. And that's sort of my time to myself. Sometimes you get the kids coming in asking for some chippies or something like that. But that's one time that I sort of get to just focus on doing something that I like. And I guess the other time is I try and get up 3-4 times a week and go for a run in the mornings.
what are you listening to when you've got your headphones on there? Is it calm, peaceful music? Is it podcasts? Is it music? What's your strategy in terms of that?
I usually listen to basketball podcasts.
Yeah.
Because I'm quite interested in the NBA, but I don't get to really watch any games. So I'll usually just listen to podcasts and try and get a feel for what's going on in the NBA that way.
We had Kefty on, I think 2 weeks ago, and he talked about how the sort of social aspect of keeping his mental health was a big thing for him. You've said that you've kind of given up rugby and that was a way of keeping up with your mates. Is that something that is important for yourself, and how do you go about managing that?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm lacking at the moment, I guess, is that close friend group. It's a bit different, I guess, when you're parents, you're looking at socializing with people with kids. So you make new groups of friends and things like that, but it's also you're planning your time around your kids. So to catch up with people is not always the easiest. But I definitely try and catch up with everyone from uni that stops through town whenever they're coming through coughs. And I still try and get down to see everyone every now and then. But it's definitely an aspect that I guess is hard to maintain and missing. And I'm probably not the best communicator. I'm not really one to pick up the phone and call my mates and have a chat just to catch up. I think Luke's, and then that's probably pretty few and far between.
Yeah, how often do you reckon we chat on the phone, Barry? I guess to give people context, we're probably best mates and have been since we started at uni back in, what year was that? 2009. How often do you reckon we talk? We're probably pretty bad at it.
I'd say it's once every 2 months.
Yeah,
would be best case.
Yeah, I agree. But I guess we can identify that we need to work on that, you and me.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah.
Communication's definitely not a strong suit of mine.
Sort of going back to that, I started a year after you guys. You two started at the same time. The way that we sort of all interact around mental health has changed, thanks to sort of Kel's and his initiative with Line and Length. If you had your time back over at uni, would you change the way you communicated about mental health back then?
That's a good question. Yes and no. I think I definitely had those conversations with people, but so I'm comfortable that I was opening up when I needed to, but it was quite often while I was drunk and probably not in the ideal mind state to be having those conversations, and the people I was having them with probably weren't in the right state to respond. I know there's definitely times down in Bathurst where it all just it gets to you. You've been away from your sort of support network and your close family, and you're learning to turn this group of mates that you've just met into your family, which in the later years was great, but in the earlier years you struggle with that isolation sometimes, especially when
I think that's how we became such good mates, because I came from Taree to Bathurst, you came from Coffs to Bathurst, which I mean is over. We were so far from home, and you saw that a lot of people came from Sydney and sort of knew each other and had cliques and stuff, and we sort of didn't. We were literally just starting from scratch. We were so far from our families. We were so far from our emotional support. So we just had to buy into the people that were around us. I think that's how our sort of relationship built and got so strong.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
I'll go over to you, Aiden. What do you got for us?
Just kind of, how would you suggest people go about building those sort of support networks? With both of you sort of moving, I mean, both of you can answer this. You both moved so far away from home, and like you said, you had to buy into it quite quickly. If someone were to be moving away, or maybe someone listening to this podcast is sort of relocating, what advice would you give them to sort of start setting up those support networks as quickly as they could?
Yeah, I think, from my experience down in Bathurst, was the rugby club, 100%. It was a place where you could go and everyone felt accepted. You could, you felt like you could sort of talk to anyone, and everyone was your mates. There's 100 mates there from day one. So my advice, I guess, and it's the same when I moved back to Coffs, the first thing I did was find a sports club, and whatever sport you're into, but for me it was rugby. So find that group of like-minded people and just throw yourself into it.
Yeah, my advice, if you're somewhere new by yourself, is you have to make the effort to keep yourself entertained, whether through hobbies, so recreational sporting clubs, social sporting clubs, doing your hobbies, pursuing your interests, and making friends that way, whether it's working with colleagues, or having drinks with colleagues, or something along those lines. You need to be actively doing things for yourself whilst maintaining your social life as well, which can be hard to do. But if you're just going to work and coming home by yourself, that's when you can get into a bad habit, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that also speaks to sort of the community that you foster around line and length, Kels, where, you know, the boys are checking in on each other regardless of whether they were friends before line and length. You know, if they've got up and spoken, or if they've spoken to each other throughout the day, they check in after and then make sure that everyone's sort of doing all right. And then sort of, Bear, you said you've got to work on your communication. I think a lot of people do. I think that speaks to most people is, have they checked in on their mates, or you know, have they reached out, sort of thing. So I definitely don't think you're alone in that conversation, and it's probably something, you know, I can improve on it myself, and you boys both highlighted it too. So it's something that moving forward everyone should be doing. With so much on your plate, man, and then the sort of very limited time that you do get to yourself, what are the sort of small joys in life that you sort of take, the little wins, I guess?
Yeah, it's different when you're a parent, and I guess most of you won't be able to relate to this, but you just take joy in your kids. It's the simple things, like I had my first parent-teacher interview for Flynn yesterday morning, sorry, and just hearing how he's going at school gives you that sort of feeling of joy and satisfaction that you're doing something right. And it's the same with, I guess, like when I get home from work and they run out the side of the front door to like the car to come and see me, like all they want is you, and that's all that matters to them in their whole life. So you take joy and passion and things like that from other people that you might not get from yourself, and that you might not be able to spend that time on yourself, but by spending that time with the kids, you're getting that feeling as well.
It's a really lovely answer, Ryan. That is really lovely to hear.
Throughout, you know, throughout the moving back to Coffs, studying law, becoming a father, getting married, that sort of stuff, how did we've heard a little bit about your mental health journey there. Were there at any points where, you know, you felt you really needed to improve on your mental health and you made active changes towards it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess when I first sort of started in my career, I had a lot of anxiety. So before I'd come to work, some days I was actually physically sick, thinking about what I had to do and what was happening at work, and just building up that feeling inside myself of being anxious about the workload and what I had to do that day. So that's definitely subsided since I've become more experienced and more settled and comfortable in my job, and which is great. And I don't know really that there was much I could have done at that stage in my life to deal with that, other than progressing and becoming more experienced.
Yeah, when you were struggling with that anxiety in the mornings before work, were you communicating that to people, or were you just internalizing that and keeping it to yourself?
I did just keep it to myself for quite a while. But then I spoke to, obviously, my wife about it, and I spoke to my boss about it, and they were both great. So at work, they did sort of take some of the pressure off and lighten the load a little bit for me, which helped a lot with that sort of thing. And just having that person at home that's aware of what you're going through and what you're dealing with, it just helps that somebody else knows what's going on.
Yes, I attest to that. Like when I said I spoke about my depression and anxiety, when I told all the boys, like it's just that feeling of relief, isn't it? Like you can't sort of express in words how much it just helps you to know that someone else knows and is there to support you.
Absolutely. I feel like even just that release in itself helps to alleviate the issues you're dealing with.
You said that you were kind of keeping it to yourself in the beginning. Was there a reason for that? Was there a reason why you didn't want to share those feelings of anxiety?
I guess it wasn't that I didn't want to share them. I just don't think I realised what was happening. I didn't really know whether it was normal or whether everyone felt like this at certain stages, and whether it was just a phase that would pass, or it was something I was dealing with at the time that would go away. But eventually, as it dragged on, I guess you realise that no, something needs to be done, or this is just going to stay like this forever.
You said that once you sort of reached out and you let both your wife and sort of your boss at work know, that kind of alleviated that stress and helped. They found ways to sort of help you cope. Was it obviously it was something you wished you'd done earlier?
Yeah, absolutely wished I'd done it earlier. I think if I had done it earlier, it wouldn't have got to the point that it did. But I think I may never have done it earlier because it wasn't at that point. So I think it needed to get to that point for me to realise that it was actually a real issue that needed to be addressed.
Looking back on that now, sort of moving when you move forward, if you sort of get those feelings again, is that something that now with sort of that wisdom, that hindsight, you'll address that sort of thing earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what those feelings are. So as soon as something like that starts to bubble up again, I'll be taking those same steps of speaking to somebody and letting people know, I guess, what I'm dealing with, to try and take the pressure off.
And is that your wife that you lean on? She's your sort of emotional support person?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're lucky in Coffs to have your parents around you. Do you lean on them much as well?
Yeah, I do. I guess not as much as I previously did. Now that I've got my wife and everything like that. But I can always pick up the phone and have a chat to dad or mum. And they're pretty good at helping me talk things through and finding some perspective.
I'm sure Kimbo and Syria are. They're lovely people.
Yeah.
Guys, I think that's a really nice place to sort of wrap this up. Bear, thank you so much for sharing your journey, and it's an incredible story, mate. And I look forward to hearing about more of the adventures of Bear, the solicitor, and parent and husband as well. And is there anything else you'd like to sort of let any of our listeners know?
I guess one other aspect I did sort of want to just have a brief chat about was stress as well. That's another major, I guess, mental health issue that I was dealing with, especially towards the end of last year. And I was dealing with it the wrong way. I was dealing with it by drinking. So I was coming home every night. I wouldn't say it was a drinking problem, but I was coming home most nights and just having 3 or 4 beers. And since the start of this year, I've realised that was what I was doing, and haven't had a drink since New Year's.
Have you replaced that with sort of healthier habits, or you just decided to completely cut that out and there's another way, or is there another way that you're sort of dealing with that stress?
Just by talking. So we sort of me and my wife get home every night and have a bit of a debrief about our day. I guess it's definitely not a planned thing we do, but it's an informal thing we've sort of just started doing. We just chat about what happened in our day and that sort of thing, and it just helps to unload that stress. And I'm definitely not off the drink forever, but just needed a break. I've also changed to a complete plant-based diet, so just making some big health changes to sort of try and better myself a bit.
Awesome, mate.
That's great, Barry. It's so good to hear that you're implementing those strategies. I love hearing stories about how people have identified that they have a problem, and then hearing about their strategies. I think that's what this whole podcast is about. Like, we're just knock about regular, relatable blokes, and hearing that not everyone's world is perfect, and that we're all just genuinely here to learn from each other. Yeah,
everyone's got a story. You just got to uncover it.
That's right. That's what this platform's about.
Well, and thank you for sharing your story there. It's a really different perspective than what we've had on the podcast so far, and I really appreciate you wanting to be a part of it and sharing your story as well.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
No worries.
Well done, Barry.
That'll be it for us this week, guys. But look, stay tuned next week, and we'll have another person on and another awesome story to tell. Thanks very much, guys.